And we're back with another edition of the Cosmic Crossfire. This is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos and Game Source. We truly appreciate you being part of the broadcast here today. And he is back again to be in the the Cosmic the Cosmic Crossfire. He is the man, the myth, the legend behind RobMcCallumFilms.com. You want to check out all of his great work, including the upcoming documentaries from Kitty, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, obviously The Power of Grayskull, of course, and also, he's got a ton of other stuff on the way. You just got to keep up with him by going to RobMcCallumFilms.com. Rob, it's such a pleasure having you on the show today. What's going on, my friend?
Well, a lot of winter is going on here in Canada. In this early edition of our recording sessions, usually we record in the late hours of the night, at least where I live currently in Canada. But now this is the early morning session. And, based on the intro there, I'm tempted to change the title of this program to The Cosmic Crockpot.
Exactly. I'll tell you what. For first, you were under the weather. Now I'm under the weather. So it's
going around. It's going around for sure.
It's going around. Telecommuting that virus back and forth.
We're just that infectious.
Yes. But I did get a chance to see you with the family, in that beautiful Christmas picture with Santa. But I gotta say, after you had a chance to put your stepson there, and he has time with Santa. Okay, between you and I, you actually sat on Santa's lap too and wished for something, didn't you?
Absolutely. And then Santa sat on my lap and he wished for something too.
Okay.
He wished for a new hip after I sat on his lap.
It's probably. They can do that real easy these days if you got great health
Well,
coverage.
North Pole's got some great magical coverage.
Yes, that it does. Well, again, we are here in the Cosmic Crossfire. I'll tell you what, Rob, we are talking a lot of great things in pop culture. So, what, pray tell, is on your mind in the world of pop culture?
Well, this was going to be the 1 week that I went out of my way not to include anything about DC Films and Warner Brothers. And then you suggested that we had to talk about the reorganization of the slate of films that DC is set to release.
So it's out there. I mean, somebody was unhappy in Warner Brothers as far as the way Justice League is performing. It looks like it's probably going to plateau just short of $700 million overall worldwide, which is pretty disappointing when they had aspirations and hopes of being over $1 billion. So some heads are rolling at Warner Brothers and DC Films, and because of that, they changed. They announced going forward a slate which has some interesting names and some interesting names, taken off the list.
Okay, well, let's go through the slated films that currently remain committed to in the DC architecture and their universe. And in that slate of films includes Aquaman, Shazam, Suicide Squad 2, The Batman, Justice League Dark, Batgirl, Green Lantern Corps, The Flash, Flashpoint, and Wonder Woman 2. I don't think I missed anything that was still green light for go. Those are the ones that DC is still committing to at this point going forward. Who knows what can happen, though, of course. The Batman, for example, might not cast the right actor for a long time, so that might get pushed. Justice League Dark might not have the appeal. That could get off the radar again. Batgirl with Joss Whedon and Joss Whedon's connection to Justice League, it might shift him off, bring somebody else on. It might leave the whole project up in the air. Green Lantern Corps has maybe a little bit of an uphill climb as well with Ryan Reynolds' murky history. I think the only ones that we know for sure of that list that are definitely going to happen are Aquaman and Wonder Woman 2, given their status. Wonder Woman 2, of course, huge hit for DC. Aquaman already in post-production with James Wan. I think Shazam is probably a guarantee out of all that.
Because they've had some casting choices and things of that nature.
Yeah. But all the other ones listed there are either just at the script stage or in the development part. So they're far from a guarantee, but they're at least announced with logo work to go forward. Now, that said, you are thinking, well, there's a bunch of films I heard were coming out just by listening to the Pop Culture Cosmos or the Pop Culture Multiverse that weren't listed there. And some of the ones that I've got missing, Gerald, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is Cyborg, Justice League 2, Man of Steel 2, Nightwing, Gotham City Sirens, a Harley Joker team up, a Harley solo film, a Joker solo film, which is tied to Scorsese, a Deathstroke solo film, and Black Adam that's supposed to star Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
And that Joker was supposed to be like a prequel, something going back in time, I believe, so if I remember correctly.
I'm not sure, to be honest, of what the premise was.
I think it was. I think it's set in a different time realm. I think it was just going as far as being a prequel, kind of, precursor to what he was doing in whatever the modern age of DC films was with Suicide Squad and whatnot. But yeah, that's an interesting slate. Because you and I have talked about pretty much over the course of 2017, all these proposed ideas, all these proposed films that were coming out, and a lot of them, because of the lack of success of films not named Wonder Woman in the DC Films universe, are suffering. And I Aquaman, you could see Jason Momoa's as far as his charisma and I think a lot the studio really is still behind Aquaman 100%. We've also talked about the success of Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman 2 seems like a no-brainer. I'd like to see another Justice League, but after that, like you said, it's a mixed bag. And with the Batman, who knows what goes on it, because Ben Affleck is, most likely at this point and probably not going to stay within the Batman universe, which is kind of disappointing for me, because I want to see a continuous identity that I can relate to within this DC Films universe, and it doesn't look like it's going to be the case. No matter what your thoughts on his performance is, it's still kind of murky out there as far as for the rest of it. Green Lantern Corps, I agree with you, because there still is that bad stigma from the original Green Lantern movie earlier this decade with Ryan Reynolds, and trying to create something pretty much entirely different is kind of, I don't know, kind of risky at this point. But you and I both have seen when as far as Green Lantern being a major part of the DC film slate going forward, as far as being involved with that, because he's right there with the DC Films entrance before the film comes up. He's right there. The Green Lantern Corps were actually part of one of the opening montages within the Justice League. So definitely, I think they want to commit to Justice League Corps. I'm just not sure if it's a great idea.
Well, lots to unpack there. First, I think of the films that are missing, stuff like Nightwing, we know they're casting. Justice League 2, the status of that is largely dependent on what happens with Justice League 1, perhaps. Gotham City Sirens, Harley and Joker team up. Even though those are missing from the big announcements, I think those films in particular, same with Black Adam and The Rock, featuring The Rock, are still on the slate. I think they're just a little bit further behind on the focus for what Warner Brothers is going to come out. In the same way that Batgirl was included, I think you could make an argument that Nightwing should be in there too, but they don't want to have to announce 25 films when they can just announce the 10, that they definitely feel a little bit more confident. I mean, not only last week, we talked about Nightwing getting essentially an open casting call across the world from its director. So I think that some of these films still have momentum, and just because they're missing, it doesn't mean that they're dead. It's just they might not be ready to be announced yet. Now, I mean, something with the Black Adam.
Can I ask you one thing? Were you pleasantly surprised about Justice League Dark still being thought of as far as a positive within the DC Films environment? I was pleasantly surprised that it remains still something that they want to go ahead with at some point in time.
I guess my only questions with Justice League Dark is how the studio plans to explain what that is, opposed to Justice League Bright. You know what I mean? Like, they almost need a Justice League sequel to introduce the dark component of it in those characters for it to go off, or they need that Batman character to assemble this supernatural division of Justice League to kind of go forward. So it'll be interesting to see how they set up that platform for that film and those heroes to exist. But I guess, when you look at something like Justice League Dark going forward, but not something like Man of Steel 2 being announced, it's like, wow, so they are still going with a group identity film versus a straight up Superman film. What does that say about the characters that they're looking to explore? Now, with the Green Lantern Corps stuff, to kind of talk about some of the stuff that you were thinking there. For me, that actually represents one of the brighter points in the films that are going forward, and I think it could be a smart move because, like we saw with Guardians of the Galaxy, Thor Ragnarok, and even Winter Soldier, and the way that those superhero films dipped into other genres to find their identity, I think you could do the same with Green Lantern Corp and make it like a war movie where it's about a squad of Green Lanterns that are trying to get through this really small part in this big cosmic war, and it's more about what's going on in that moment rather than this big colossal universe ending kind of villain. And then if you can get in touch with those characters, the philosophy of the Corps, and how they're opposed to the Yellow Corps, the Black Corps, the Red Corps, I think there could be a lot of heart introduced into that and a lot of good character work that has nothing to do with Hal Jordan, what we saw. And it could really lay the groundwork for introducing either Guy Gardner or Jon Stewart for maybe a Justice League sequel.
I hope so. Like I said, that's still, after what was done before, it's kind of a tough sell to the audience. I mean, you know exactly before how well a Green Lantern movie performed when it was done. Let's just say it wasn't done up to specs as far as, it was Ryan Reynolds tried as a comedy. It didn't really work as a drama. It didn't really work as a superhero movie. It didn't really work on all accounts. So at least taking that knowledge, they will, if they go to a Green Lantern Corps movie, that it will, hopefully they can learn from those steps and not try to follow in that same pattern.
Well, I mean, this sounds maybe obvious, but I don't think that any smart filmmakers would want to repeat mistakes of their predecessors. They're lucky that Green Lantern has such a vast mythology to explore, and that it's not just one hero in the way that Batman is one hero, but being a Green Lantern is actually being part of a group of heroes that spans the entire cosmos. And it's great for DC to be able to draw upon that so that they have, in the same way we talk about Star Wars wishing for other stories in other parts of the galaxy instead of the Skywalker story, the Green Lantern Corps has that ability to talk about things that are happening outside of the realm of Earth. So
now, Justice League 2 was not mentioned, correct?
That's correct. It was not mentioned.
That is kind of surprising to me, especially given the, spoilers, sorry if you haven't seen already, the end credits scene as far as the possible setup of a Hall of Doom, as far as a kind of a villains team up as far as going against the Justice League that we already know.
I don't really think it was that interesting of a post-credit sequence, and I felt like it was the most obvious route for them to go with that kind of thing. For those of you out there that haven't seen Justice League, and judging by the box office, there's quite a few of you. Basically, there is a shot of Lex Luthor on the boat who's assembled. I think it's Deathstroke that's with him. And he said, we should start our own league, which is pretty lame, if you ask me. It's certainly comic booky, but it's not kind of the tone of everything else that we've seen before it. And what, is it going to be a two-parter where they win the first movie and then the heroes come back and win the second movie? I don't know. I think in order for a Justice League sequel to happen, I think you're going to need to see some team-up movies, which DC did really well on the comic book side through the 60s and 70s, where you had pairs of heroes teaming up, and that's a lot of the buzz around possibly the Fate of the Cyborg movie, which was supposed to feature the Flash as an integral component to it, whether it was a result of the events that happened in Flashpoint or whether it was leading up to Flashpoint. It was supposed to be like a Flash Cyborg almost buddy film, and you can see the character dynamics playing well off of that. Some of that Cyborg script may get pushed into Flashpoint or Flashpoint Part 1 and Part 2, so I can see how that would work on that side too.
I kind of had hope for Justice League as far as based off the interactions between the characters. Obviously, the movie itself is really not very well structured, and obviously it suffered from it. I'm just kind of disappointed that they've given up so easily, because I think a Justice League 2 at some point in time down the road would actually be that reaffirmation of the DC franchise. And I think if it was done better, that there was one cohesive direction, because obviously there were so many problems and so many issues with it, that I think it would probably be a lot better on the next time around. But unfortunately, at this point in time, we're not going to be able to see it come to fruition. It's like you said, if there's going to be any team ups, it's going to be of a smaller nature.
I just want to know what happens to that Russian family. That's the thing I care about the most. I mean, there was certainly enough screen time for them in Justice League that I'm dying to know what happens to them in the next film.
Exactly, and it was just I don't know why that even took place. But then again, we could say the same thing about the waitress and in the New York, in the Avengers, and then also the young.
No. The waitress in the Avengers is nothing compared.
The Ultron. Why focus your attention on those small? That was
the waitress in Avengers is nothing compared to the amount of screen time that family had in Justice League.
They did have quite a bit. Yeah, that was retelling. Because they did flashback several times to him. I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
Yeah, just so that Flash had something to do. And the big climax.
Just so they could do that compared, obviously his scene with pushing them in their truck while.
And so basically, they gave Flash something to do to be a hero, which his actions were then undercut by Superman showing up suddenly out of nowhere.
Exactly, totally undercutting his character and making him out to be a joke, so to speak.
Yeah, lame, super lame. I guess the thing that I would say that you might see before a Justice League 2 or another Justice League film would likely be a team-up film between Green Lantern and Green Arrow, especially with the racial climate that's going on in North America right now in current political views. In the 70s, it was the same kind of thing, and that string of team-up appearances with Lantern and Arrow were really cool. So with Green Arrow being popular on the small screen, who knows who makes a jump to the big screen in the same way that the Flash has. But it would be cool to see Green Arrow in that universe. And because they've established him on television, there is already a kind of knowing of who he is and what he is, and maybe if we can bring some sensibilities to what Green Lantern could be, that would be a good kind of team up to do.
I was agreeing with you on that. I just thought that ended on a good note. So I'm like, okay, you're on it, man.
Anything else you want to talk about in terms of the DC slate and what's coming, what's missing, and where we might be going?
No, actually, I just think it's pretty cut and dry for now. They're searching. It's just they're searching, and you and I have spoke of many times that they're constantly trying to go ahead and compare themselves to Marvel, and constantly trying to drive themselves towards Marvel instead of forging their own path and being happy with what they're doing. They're always comparing themselves to Marvel. It's pretty obvious. And if they're not up to what Marvel's doing, they get really irritated and they make rational and sometimes irrational changes. They make very rash changes. And it's disappointing to see that we could be talking about here in 6 months to a year about another dramatic changes in the DC film slate. It wouldn't surprise me because, as you and I have spoke of over the course of the year, nothing surprises us when it comes to DC films.
Yeah, I do think that you will see Black Adam as well with The Rock. I'm guessing that with an actor of his cachet, it's a matter of finding the schedule for him to shoot it and when that's going to happen and be released. But there is nobody that defines superhero better than The Rock these days, and to have a poster child that can handle the press like he can, criticisms and fun. I mean, the guy decided to star in Jumanji, and the positive reviews of that are definitely flooding out. And it could be the Christmas film, aside from the obvious ones.
And that's a credit to him because I'll be honest with you, the trailers came out and it looked like a joke. It really looked like a film that was not going to be something that was going to do very well at the box office. But reviews come out very solid. And people are saying great things. I like the fact that they used and utilized the Amazon Prime factor for early screenings and get a lot of people involved and get some buzz on it. And I do agree with you. I think Jumanji can do very well this winter season.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be interesting to see how those numbers fare, especially in relation.
And to get him involved in the DC universe would be a very smart move.
I agree. But Jumanji is going to have to take on the biggest film of the year, which is targeting over $400 million. I think it was 435 was the last estimate I saw for Star Wars: The Last Jedi, which had its premiere, of course, and the early reactions are in. There are a few reviews out there. I've avoided them all, of course. I don't want to see anything. I have a ticket for opening night. If you're listening to this on Friday, that would have been yesterday. We're recording, Wednesday, just mere hours before the film comes out. We're going to keep this spoiler free because we haven't seen it, so that's pretty easy to do. The thing I did want to talk about, of course, is the premiere of The Last Jedi. There was both the Hollywood and the UK premiere now have taken place. And specifically for the premiere in Hollywood, I thought it was interesting that they spent 6 months readying the theater. Okay, so they spent 6 months installing a 70-foot by 30-foot high screen. It's a Dolby Vision high dynamic range projection system and a full projection booth. It had 193 speakers for 40 channels of Dolby Atmos immersive sound. Now, 40 channels, what does that mean? Well, if anybody out there is somewhat familiar with surround sound, the first kind of foray to surround sound was 5.1. When you listen to something in stereo, it's 2 channels, left and right. Surround sound is 2 left and right front speakers, 2 left and right back speakers, a center channel, and that 0.1 is the subwoofer. So for the Last Jedi premiere, they introduced 93 channels of audio for an Atmos, basically immersive sound, where that speaker is not just positioned in front and behind, but all around you, underneath you, above you, like a giant array, a spherical array. That sound was going to hit you in every direction. And then that screen, of course, 2,100 square feet. It's pretty impressive too. My problem.
I'm jealous. I'm just saying right now, I'm jealous.
I know, but this is my problem. I'm jealous because I will never see the film presented like that. I will never see it presented like that. I will only ever see a less than equal presentation of that film. That's not fair. That's what I'm saying. That's my comment.
I'll make some calls. How about that? I'll make some calls.
Okay, make some calls. But it also reminds me of the days versus whether a theater was truly showing an IMAX film or an XD cinema film, and then digital 2K versus 4K projections and surround sound versus Atmos, environments. Where is your dollar sitting? What are you going to put your money down when it comes to a film like this? What's the takeaway from this big premiere 6-month installation plan, do you think?
Well, I'll tell you what, it was so spectacular. If you saw the photographs, I mean, they had the almost to scale, what the AT and whatnot, just my gosh, towering over the entire theater, and the crowd and whatnot. It was just awesome to see that they were going to such expense for this movie, that they're putting everything behind it. It's great when they support a film like that. All I can tell you is my experience when I in this days and age of 2017, watching films in a better experience, like for instance IMAX. I got to see Blade Runner 2049 in IMAX, and I'll tell you what, I don't regret it a bit paying the extra money, because that was a beautiful movie that was enhanced even further with the IMAX and enhanced Dolby surround sound system. It was just so beautiful to watch and awesome to listen to. Definitely better than the regular movie experiences I have. But it also reminds me of the first time I've told you the story about Predator 2, right?
I'm not sure if you have.
Okay, Predator 2 was the first movie I actually heard that Dolby Pro Logic actually came into existence, as far as within theaters that I had heard. I sat in the theater. You're just hearing. Many years it was just left speaker, right speaker, and then Dolby Pro Logic came out in theaters, and it just revolutionized the way you could actually experience cinema. And I sat down with it with a friend, and I thought it was just awesome. And if you've ever seen Predator 2, no, it has no story really. It's just a Predator 2, going.
But it has Danny Glover.
Dan has Danny Glover, and obviously it was what it is, but it's a very violent, loud action flick that was almost the perfect movie to see in a new experience, especially auditory. And experiencing that, I was just overwhelmed for like 2 hours. I don't know how my friend just fell asleep in it, but it's volume was 10, and you hearing and experiencing all this new sounds, like, wow, I can actually feel the bullets graze behind my head. It seems seemingly, I can actually hear the whizzing by. I just felt like I was immersed within the movie for the first time. Now, your ears become trained after a while and you become used to that type of environment. But it's always great when you go to a theater or you go to a movie experience and you actually get to experience something new and different. And I'm hoping that one day these theaters that are charging so much to people out there will provide that experience that is beyond what they're doing today, because I think the technology is there. It's just applying it and then charging people responsibly and respectively for it.
Well, I tell you, when I first checked out Dolby Atmos when part one of The Hobbit hit, there was one theater in Vegas that had it. It was at the Brendan Theaters at the Palms. And I checked it out, and I had no idea what to expect other than a more immersive soundscape, which is a really hard thing to sell people on, because you can say it's a bigger screen, it's, you know, a sharper image, but it's hard to really sell what the sound is. Now, this was one of the first films that they had done this with, and maybe this was a result of it, but I actually got nauseous at a point in The Hobbit because of the way that the soundscape was rolling. It had nothing to do with the visuals. It was a standard theatrical 4K projection screen. It wasn't IMAX. It wasn't 3D, but the way in which that it rotated, I think they were going on the griffins or whatever and escaping. They were going through a tunnel, but there was lots of circular motion happening. And I tell you,
it wasn't in the barrels or anything like that when they were going
no,
down the. Okay.
it was definitely a flying scene, or the camera was going through the mountain or something like that. And it really churned my stomach, and I had to look away from the visuals just to eliminate one half of the AV experience to get grounded. Now, that was the only time that happened, but it just shows how powerful sound can be. I mean, what I love, the sound guy says, you know, without sound, it's just surveillance. And of course, the video guys say without video, it's just radio. So there's this ongoing thing in the industry between, you know, which is more important. Of course, it's the marriage of the two. But I think that the thing you've really got to look at is, if you're going to be spending a lot of money to go to the theaters, and it is a lot of money these days, especially if you're going with a family, as Gerald and I know, look up the stats of your local multiplex. Go on their website and see what they're showing the film in. Is it a regular screen? Is it a bigger screen? What are the sound options? Because if you're going there and you're going to be forking over 20, 30, 40, 50 bucks, you know, add the drinks in and everything like that, you want to make sure that you're getting the best experience, I think. You don't want to save $2 or $3 and be crammed into the small theater at the end on a screen that's, you know, not that much bigger than your television at home, when you can spend maybe the $3 or $4 extra dollars for that one event movie and really experience something new. I mean, the whole idea of going to the theaters these days is to have that new experience and to make it the event, because home theaters are so good, and filmmakers know that, and the theater exhibitors know that. So don't let them get away with, you know, cheapening, you know, the experience that you're going to have.
I can't agree with you more. And you know, people always talk about the rising price of theater costs and how it's so expensive to go see a film. I get you. I couldn't agree with you more. Couldn't agree with Josh and what he said over the past year in regards to it as well. But if you are going to make that investment, make sure it's a wise one, and make sure it's something that you are truly want to experience. Like you said, check out, is it, you know, what type of sound system is it driving? Because each theater has separate ones that actually have different audio experiences. Is it just going to be regular Dolby Pro Logic, or is it going to be something even more enhanced? Is it going to be visually something that's regular, or is it going to be something even more IMAX 3D, what have you? You know, it's just, you have to make sure you're making a wise investment before you go out to the theaters these days. I know it sounds crazy. I know it's not like the old days where you could just go get in line and there you go. But you definitely, for the money, for the price that it now costs, you definitely want to make sure you're making a good choice, because it can pay off with a great experience.
Speaking of good choices and paying off things with experience and looking for those, the things that are on our bucket list, the things we want to cross off, the choices we make and where we go in life, Patrick Stewart has piped up recently about an experience that he would like to have. Now, this echoes back to another topic that we had on the previous weeks of the Pop Culture Cosmos, and this is with Quentin Tarantino possibly coming in to direct a Star Trek film. Now, he's pushing for a hard R rating. Why Star Trek needs to be a hard R is, I don't know. I don't know why at this point, because
I don't know why either.
Trek is great when the writing is great. For me, it's not really a director's franchise. It doesn't mean it can't be visual, but Trek for me is all about when the ideas are strong, when the exploration of those ideas is really strong, and I think that all happens on the page. I don't think directing is going to elevate where it starts from the script in something like Trek. Star Wars, completely different. I can understand the fantasy elements where that's coming from. So again, like I've said before, I'm not sure how much Tarantino is going to bring in terms of directing to a film, and I'll be the first to be in line to see what he wants to do with it. But it really caught me off guard when I read earlier this week that Patrick Stewart is up for returning as Jean-Luc Picard in a Tarantino-directed Trek film. He says, "One of my dreams is to work with Tarantino. I admire his work so much, and to be in a Tarantino film would give me so much satisfaction. So if he's going to direct something to do with Star Trek, and there was a possibility of dear old Jean-Luc showing up again and doing that for Mr. Tarantino, I would embrace it." So what do you think about that? I mean, how does this even work without some sort of awkward time travel conundrum, paradox, blurring of continuity anyways?
Well, the last time we did see Jean-Luc Picard on the TV screen, he was a very old individual indeed, even actually portraying someone older than he is currently, if I remember correctly.
All good things, I believe, was the episode.
Yeah, absolutely. So they would have to go back in time, I believe, in order to go ahead and create something cohesive enough, and obviously that's something that's desirable enough for him to be effective. So I don't know. And then possibility of dropping a couple expletives as well, as I guess because it's a Tarantino film. But this leads back to my question to you: is you obviously sounded off as regards to your thoughts on Tarantino, which I share with you because I've seen the negative flack that Star Trek Discovery has had because of the fact it had episodes which had unnecessary expletives added to it just for the sake of expletives. So I don't like this. I appreciate Tarantino. He is one of the greatest filmmakers of the past 25 years. No question about it. But to see it having to go this route just by adding maybe a little bit of gore, a little bit of language and things that I don't know, if there could be a disconnect there that I think some fans may not be able to relate with. I don't know. Do you think it's something that's going to be portrayed well by Tarantino, or is there going to be constrictions that he will have to face because of the Star Trek universe that even he can't overcome to make it a successful movie?
I think Tarantino immediately has to understand that Star Trek will always be bigger than he is. And he's got to give into that. He's got to obey the franchise and serve the franchise first and foremost. This isn't going to be a Tarantino film. This is going to be a Star Trek film that happens to be directed by Tarantino if it goes forward. Now, adding Patrick Stewart into the mix as Picard makes me more interested in what it could be. But you could sub out Tarantino for any director and say that Patrick Stewart might come back to play Jean-Luc Picard, and I would still be as interested. Now, if Patrick Stewart is saying he's only going to be in it because of Tarantino, then that might be the only way to kind of do that. But I don't know that the film is better because of Tarantino. I mean, he's a master director for sure, and I love his work. The franchise will always be bigger than he is, and I'm not sure that he understands that yet. It's almost like was it Alejandro Inarritu who directed Prisoner of Azkaban? Like, it's a great film. The visuals are fantastic, but at the end of the day, it's a Harry Potter film. It's not one of his films. It's not Y Tu Mamá También or anything he's directed since. It's a Harry Potter film. It will always be remembered as a Harry Potter film that he just happened to direct. And I think it's going to be the same with this. For it to work, it has to fit in the flavor of everything that is Trek overall and not everything the flavor is that is Tarantino. And if he can put aside those demands, then maybe it can be the greatest Trek film.
I mean, because we've seen with the Star Trek reboot in 2009, when it's done real well, it performs very good. It performs very, very strong. It made close to $500 million worldwide, but it has become one of the most rewatched movies on broadcast television that are out there. So I'm assuming on home video it is done extremely well, also. And in Star Trek Into Darkness, say what you want. I enjoyed it. I thought it's almost as good as the first reboot. People are all over the place on it, but that did almost as well as the original Star Trek reboot, monetary wise. Now, the previous entity before this Tarantino option, Star Trek Contact,
Beyond.
Star
Oh,
Trek Contact,
you
Star Trek.
mean you mean Beyond, the third one in the series?
Star Trek Beyond, Star Trek Beyond. Sorry, going back for the Star Trek contract. Star Trek Beyond. That obviously, despite decent reviews on it and a lot of the cast liking the direction that it went, unfortunately, it didn't click with audiences. Maybe I still think where it was placed, I think was a bad time, but that's just me. I think going back on it, I think they would have placed it somewhere else if I was Paramount. But it obviously leads to something dramatically, needing to be changed within the Star Trek universe in their mind. When I think it just takes a better film and a better placement of that film so you could promote it properly, because I don't think it was properly promoted as well as the previous two films in the series.
I think Star Trek Beyond was taken for granted. I think it was, okay, Trek is back up and running in the theaters and we're going to do the third film. Like, slow down, guys. You realize that you're like doing a trilogy at this point, or the third entry in the series. Like, what are your plans? How does this fit into the bigger picture? Are you trying to do 10 films? Are you trying to do 4 films, 5 films? Like, you look at the original cast, they did 6. Generations was kind of a split between Kirk appearing in with the stuff with Picard, and then you had Next Generation doing what, 5, I think? You had First Contact, you had Insurrection, you had Nemesis. Maybe it was just the 3. Anyways, I'm not a huge fan of the next gen movies.
I think they did 4. We'll have to check.
I'm not a huge fan of the Next Generation movies. That's neither here nor there. But I do love Next Generation, the show. And I think that Paramount was a little bit high on themselves when they were trying to do this third Star Trek film. They needed something. They got Simon Pegg to come in and rewrite it. I thought that the plot was more or less okay. I just think it got to the point where it wasn't bigger than anything they had ever done on TV, because the writing was never bigger than it had been so far in the series. And the writing needs to be big for Trek to work.
I just thought it was and put at the wrong place, because there was the Bourne movie out and several other movies that came out in July at that period of time, and you cannot compete in that same series. It's just another movie. When it comes out and it's not an event, Star Trek fails, and that's the problem.
Well, and in the 50th year of its anniversary of its existence too, right?
Exactly. They should have taken that momentum and done something more with it, and maybe put it to a holiday film, or either bumped it up maybe to a March or even a Memorial Day film. But by putting it where it was destined to be mediocre, destined to be just another film. Because like I said, the Bourne film came out just before it, and there was other films that came out in that month that were competing for the same space, that were right there as far as notoriety is concerned. And you have to bring a Star Trek out just like a Star Wars out. Make it an event. Make it something special. And if it just comes out just like another movie of the week, then people are just going to watch it and attend it like another movie of the week.
Well, I do think it could be interesting if Paramount decides that they're going to do a next-gen movie kind of out of nowhere with Picard at the helm, instead of another, here's Chris Pine, here's Patrick Stewart, 2 wacky guys from 2 different timelines team up. If they don't do a team-up movie and they decide to put that cast on hold that they've done with Zachary Quinto and Chris Pine in order to take a chance at doing a next-gen movie that centers around Patrick Stewart, I think they could get away with it. I think there's enough of a fan base there. I think that the Tarantino angle, the Patrick Stewart angle, I think it could live without them having to do an origin story. Now, if they want to tie it into the existing cast, I think that's when it gets a little convoluted. But think about this, where Star Trek Discovery is being set up and how that series is being played out, and how that will continue to basically be a new story every season that exists within the timelines that have all been set. They could essentially do a next generation movie that leads into a series that might not be the next gen cast, but plays off the events of that movie as a perfect lead-in.
Now, I want to ask you this. If you're talking about not having them team up together, do you think there's still plenty of life with this newer cast as far as the Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto, Zoe Saldana, whatnot? I think there is. I think they're great. I think they're an awesome cast that's assembled together. I think you've got a lot of A-list actors there that do a real credible job of just the material that they need to come up with for them just needs to be better. And I think there's a lot of life in them in their own films. And I agree with you. If you put them together with a Jean-Luc Picard or Star Trek Discovery or that type of deal, it does become convoluted. But do you think there's a lot of life for this current cast of characters in the Star Trek universe?
It's not a question of the cast, and it's not a question of talent for anything that's happened on screen. You know, as much as I don't like Into Darkness, it was executed well. The production looks great. The acting was more or less pretty good and on par with the first film. Like I said at the beginning of this, it's going to come down to the writing. Can they come up with a script that is good enough for their version of Trek, which is a little bit more action-centric than it is exploratory thoughts and feelings and emotions and moral conundrums? That's why Star Trek has always worked in the past. That's why Next Generation took off and became, you know, a huge hit across 7 seasons in prime time. That's how it was able to spawn into Voyager and Deep Space Nine, and even, you know, really set the stage for Enterprise. It's because it's these moral conundrums. What are you going to do in these no-win scenarios? What is the identity of humanity? And so far, Star Trek Beyond being the most recent example with this new cast, it's all been about action and blowing things up and, you know, can we get out of this alive and can we save the thing before time runs out, instead of what is the human thing to do. Speaking of reboots, though, there's been some very exciting information for some fan bases out there at the very least. This is something that I've been privy to for the last couple months, at least a couple months, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, that I knew this was going to happen. I just wasn't sure when it was going to be announced. And that's that She-Ra is being rebooted on Netflix, and it has nothing to do with He-Man, which comes back to a discussion we had last week and online about should a She-Ra movie get pushed ahead of a He-Man movie. Now I'm going to read the kind of press statement so everybody has an idea what's going on. Noelle Stevenson will be the showrunner on this new Netflix DreamWorks show, and it's going to be the trailblazing girl power icon that originally debuted in 1985 to satisfy an overwhelming demand for a female lead fantasy series. With Stevenson's unique voice at the helm, fans are in store for an epic and timely tale that celebrates female friendship and empowerment, led by a warrior princess tailor-made for today. What do you think about She-Ra's reboot coming on Netflix and it having seemingly nothing to do with He-Man and the Masters of the Universe?
I like it, actually. You talked about just previously with the Star Trek universe, as far as mixing in too many things, it becomes convoluted. I kind of like hanging out on its own and trying to see if it will break out on its own, because a lot of audiences that will watch it at first aren't familiar with the source material. So this could be something that might take off on its own, but you gotta try. You gotta see if that's the case. And if you want to be able to connect it with the He-Man universe, you can always do that down the road at some point. But I definitely think that She-Ra on her own could actually do something very, very good for numbers for Netflix.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if they're actually allowed to bring He-Man into the mix, because there are many rights issues, just like we talked many times with the Marvel Universe. And there could be an impending announcement any hour now if Marvel, aka Disney, is able to acquire 21st Century Fox. So more on that as we hear it. But in the same way that those rights are tied up, and I'm sure you've heard the stories about the Fantastic Four rights even being further segmented outside of Fox now, He-Man's rights are vastly different in terms of ownership compared to She-Ra's rights. And as a guy who's made a documentary on He-Man, and of course delving into She-Ra as, you know, a spin-off or an associated line, it goes further than some people realize. And some of the legal lines that have been crossed and how the promotions have been kind of handled and stuff, it's actually quite litigious. And I don't know what I can actually say without stirring up a tornado. I don't want to pretend that I have that kind of power. So I'm just going to see what happens from a legal point on TV, what gets aired, what doesn't get aired, what gets shown, what gets broadcast. But I really like the idea of this. I love Netflix animated series that they've done. Voltron was a great, great show. I'm only in season 2. I know season 3 is out there now. If they take that same kind of quality and care with it and they push it forward, then I think this can stand on its own without having to identify it in the shadow of the masculine identity that He-Man would bring to the table.
Hey, I want to ask you this on that. Going way back to 90s television, as far as the Xena Hercules franchises, I think there's a lot of similarities there. Yes, they did intermix as far as occasionally within their own shows and I guess 2-hour movies or whatnot. But for their own episodes, they kind of kept them apart. Sam Raimi tried to keep those entities apart for the most part. I thought it worked best when they were kept apart, and eventually Xena outperformed Hercules as far as the legendary journey, I believe. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, Hercules' legendary journey with Kevin Sorbo was the first to the table, and they introduced Xena Warrior Princess through that series. But then Xena got her own show as well, and clearly Lucy Lawless's career in that series took off and outlasted anything that Kevin Sorbo was able to do and Sam Raimi was able to do with that. Of course, they had their back and forth call-outs in the same way that we see the CW doing with their DC shows, but it was few and far between, and it was just for constant cross-promotion of the other.
Or there was some like, let's say, Bruce Campbell's character.
Autolycus.
Yeah, he would appear every now and then in each other's shows just because he was Sam Raimi favorite. So
yeah, exactly. But yeah, you're 100% right that Xena certainly has had won that war in terms of popularity. And I think if you were to ask people, what do you remember about either show or, where would you know Lucy Lawless from? They would say Xena. And I would gauge that a lot of people don't remember the Hercules show near as much as they remember the Xena show.
Exactly. And that's what I think could happen with the She-Ra franchise. If it could really do well on its own, but if you want to sprinkle in some elements of He-Man without having it bleed too much over into it, I guess that's okay. But I would just pretty much leave the She-Ra entity by itself, because it's to a whole new generation, and a lot of people, the majority of those people that would watch it on Netflix, will be seeing it as a whole new thing and won't associate it with She-Ra's past and past history. So I definitely think this could be a great opportunity for Netflix to create some original programming, in light of the fact that they will probably be losing quite a bit of programming in the near future with Disney creating its own streaming service.
Well, it's going to be really interesting to see what the show feels like and how it flows, and even who the villains might be, because the evil horde were He-Man villains, and the rights might say that you can't reference this. And that's just the way it's going to go. Like, they may have to create a whole bunch of new villains, and it might not be able to say for the honor of Grayskull for when she transforms. There could be a bunch of new things in place, but that doesn't mean that this idea of this transforming, super-powered individual with a group of friends can't survive. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see where the lines are drawn and how it carves out its own identity. And if it's a legal thing where they can't include a lot of He-Man references or any, then I think that'll be the ultimate test. And it'll be really interesting because DreamWorks has a lot of shows on Netflix to see how many seasons it can spawn, and then how that trickles down to merchandising. Will they be able to launch a new line of toys for it? Will there be comic books? Will there be? Will it make it a leap to the big screen? Who knows?
I definitely would be excited to see She-Ra on Netflix. I'm excited to see how well it turns out, because I think it could be a positive step, especially coming off the bat with Wonder Woman. People have seen how well a female superhero entity can do on the screen, and that audiences are clamoring for that type of material. So definitely, I think a She-Ra could play off very well on Netflix, and if done properly, could do Netflix very well going forward.
Well, I mean, I knew something like this was going to happen the second we had picture lock on Power of Grayskull, the definitive history of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, because the second we picture locked, all these He-Man commercials started hitting airwaves. The She-Ra show was a possibility. Now there's talk of the He-Man film coming out. So, like, the second we decide to stop, there's all this new news that starts to come and inform the franchise. And it's never a good time to stop making a documentary, but that's what we have to do. We have to put an end to it. Sometimes we have to get it out there. Maybe that means there'll be a part 2 to chronicle what happens from where we leave off and how that goes forward. You never know. But speaking of documentaries, see that segue I just did? There is a new documentary that is set to hit, and I am not sure that they have that proper ending point for it or what it's going to focus on. And this is the documentary called Making Fun, the story of Funko Pops. Have you seen the trailer yet, Gerald?
I have seen it. Very interesting, and you knew it was going to happen. I think you mentioned it on social media that it was at some point it was going to be inevitable because of the fact of how popular these Funko Pops actually have become.
Yeah, it's essentially the story of Funko Pops and the rise to toy dominance. And like I said on social media, it was only a matter of time before somebody talked about this in a documentary form or pointed the spotlight to discover what that story was and share the origins and where they're going. My concern is that it might be still too early to tell that story because I don't know that there's been anything kind of concrete or definitive or ending or a time period that kind of encapsulates what that end of that story can be, because these things continue to come out. And it's only really been in the last year and a half that I think they've really taken mainstream audiences off by guard. And it went from being like essentially a countertop impulse buy to an entire section or wall at conventions or in different shops. So I'm not sure that that whole story is there. And I'll be really curious to see what anchors the film and encapsulates that 90-minute experience that I should take away from this, other than here's where the idea came from, here's how it became a smash hit, now we're doing everything. Like, what is the story? That's still something I don't know. All the trailers and marketing are find out the story behind the thing that you have on your desk, but I want to know what the story actually is. And when I find that out, and I'll watch it, of course, because it's, you know, in my wheelhouse, that's when I'll be able to say this was a good film, or this was the time to make the film, or they should have held off. What were your thoughts based on watching the trailer?
And like I said, is it an authorized one? I'm assuming it's an unauthorized documentary.
No, it's authorized.
Right? It's authorized.
It's,
so that's that.
Funko. Put it this way: Funko is promoting it. So if they didn't make it, they are certainly happy to have its promotion, and they have the
Their
people
blessing.
they have the people that started it in the film.
Okay, so that's the case. Then you know, do you think it'll come off like a Funko commercial?
I think anytime that you do a documentary or comment with media on existing IP, you have the risk of it being a commercial or at the very least promoting that thing in the same way that Nintendo Quest.
Because that's that
commercial.
Well, I'm just saying after watching it, that's what I got.
It certainly made me think that I should like these more than I currently do, which my current barometer on is I'm sick of them and I'm not going to buy any more because I have enough of them.
Well, I can say this. I was at Hot Topic the other day picking up a an item or two, whatnot, and I get in line, and it's a nice long holiday line. And whether they're holiday gifts or gifts for just themselves, there were people buying, quite a few Funko Pops still of characters, not even. I guess I would say maybe cult popularity level or off the beaten path popularity level that the normal general audience wouldn't be aware of or wouldn't know really. And I see these characters in the Funko Pop and just realize that there's still a lot of room for Funko Pop can actually still create characters and still draw off of various things in pop culture. And people are still going to eat this up. I mean, we're still right. People thought that the Funko Pop deal was going to go down, that sliding is down, it was down, it's getting less popular. No, by all means, it's still going strong today. And there's still a lot of life left as far as the Funko Pop line is concerned. And I still see people still buying these Funko Pops at like $12.50, $13 a pop. And that's just more power for Funko Pop to create, to keep on doing what you're doing. But I did see the trailer, and that's the first thing I thought was just, man, it just came off like it's almost like a Funko Pop promotional thing, but I wasn't sure if it was actually 100% authorized or given a full blessing or not.
Yeah, it's interesting because they certainly have the depth of almost that Star Wars stickiness when it comes to some of the lesser known characters in these franchises that are moving units. But I do think that it has almost reached a fever pitch, and the only thing that continues to get new momentum is when new licenses get acquired, or they start doing the vehicles like the land speeder from Star Wars, or the 3-packs that include, 2 exclusive ones. I've, as much as I like the Funko Pops that I have, and I'm looking at Darkwing Duck launch pack and Scrooge McDuck right now, I'm honestly thinking about turning them into Christmas ornaments because they're the perfect size. You could put a little, eye loop screw into them and hang them on the tree, and I think that would actually be a really cool ornament. Now Funko's going to steal that idea and make ornaments, which is basically just has a screw in them, and you can hang them on the screen on the tree.
Of course.
Yeah. There you go, Funko. Steal my idea yet again. But I think the popularity will come down to how different are the sculpts, how many new licenses are acquired, because they're going to run out of stuff eventually at some point because they have so many licenses already. So when will the Funko Pop bubble pop would be, I guess, the question that I would ask, and maybe look to see if they thought about that in the documentary and how they plan to go forward.
That they're going to have to come up with some idea down the line because, like you said, the licenses, major licenses, will stop, and you cannot. There are not enough original characters being created that can support the Funko Pop, juggernaut, for going forward for that much longer. Maybe another year, 2 years, whatnot. But there is an endpoint because there's only so much pop culture to go around.
You would think that, but now I'm thinking to myself, maybe their overhead is super small and they've got a team of 10 people doing everything, and that every Star Wars film alone, if they can come up with 10 characters for the next Star Wars film, if that pays for everything, let alone the new Avengers movie, the new DC movie, the new whatever movie, then maybe their business model will survive forever and we just might see less and less releases. Hard to say. But yes, take a look at Making Fun, the story of Funko Pops. If you're out there, I think you can just Google it and probably find the trailer. I believe it's on YouTube, like everything else seems to be that is video related. And that'll do it for another cosmic crockpot discussion. Weigh in with your thoughts on the DC slate of films, The Last Jedi, technical specifications for that premiere that will never be duplicated anywhere else, Patrick Stewart possibly teaming up with Tarantino for a Star Trek film, She-Ra's reboot, and of course, Making Fun, the story of Funko Pops.
Some really great topics today. In fact, actually, I thought that the She-Ra, I knew you were going to be talking about that, even though you didn't give me a clue in ahead of time, because I
never give you a clue.
I know how much the He-Man universe is endearing to you. Obviously, from your work on it, whatnot, but knowing you beforehand, and it's good to see the She-Ra franchise being brought back, but being brought back for a good reason, and being brought back with the possibility of it doing very well. And that actually brings out a lot of a good feelings as far as it's concerned.
Well, good Christmas feelings indeed. And She-Ra, of course, is supposed to hit in 2018 at some point too. So less than a year away from whenever that makes its debut. I would probably guess September to coincide with back to school stuff probably makes sense.
Yeah, and
TV trailer soon.
And TV watching does increase in the fall. I mean, when ratings are the strongest, so that's probably what they have in mind.
Yeah, and that also means if it comes out in the fall, like the other DreamWorks Netflix shows, we could get a Christmas special as well. So who knows? That could be fun. Indeed.
Yes. I don't even want to go with the She-Ra Christmas. There's a joke in there somewhere.
There probably is.
Oh, but you got to tell them what's going on next week in the Cosmic Crossfire.
What's going on next week in the Cosmic Crossfire, Gerald? I don't know.
There is actually another special guest that will be entering the Cosmic Crossfire.
Uh-oh. Who's that?
Do
they have to tune in next week to find out, or are you going to tell them?
I think you'll know him very well, actually. It is going to be Mr. Jay Bartlett, the star of your movie, Nintendo Quest. He doesn't like to be called star, but I just like to give him some props. He is, probably one of the biggest Star Wars fans I know of. He's probably one of the biggest Star Wars fans you know of as well.
He definitely likes some Star Wars, that's for sure.
Yes, he does. And he's going to be in the Cosmic Crossfire next week talking about The Last Jedi. And I do, I'll tell you what, if you want cannot miss discussions between these two talking Star Wars with Rob McCallum going out of his way just to antagonize Jay, And you,
No. We just happen to disagree a lot on the quality points of any and all forms of media. What if we agree on everything, Gerald? What if we just think it's that The Last Jedi is the greatest thing?
but you guys never seem to agree on anything when you're on the show with me.
Okay, well, it's you're the host of the Pop Culture Cosmos and in the multiverse. You better have a contingency plan to figure something out if Jay and I just happen to agree on everything.
Well, but that would be boring, and I don't think you two. One thing I know since I've ever met both you two and been around you two and seen all the great work that you've done is you two don't like boring very much.
So, is that going to be the makeup of the next episode of Pop Culture, the Cosmic Crossfire? It's going to be a whole episode, a whole segment of The Last Jedi.
No, if you can think of some other good things,
Well,
obviously.
if we're going to have a guest, we might as well make it worthwhile. I'm sure we can churn out 40 minutes to an hour of Last Jedi talk, whether you get the extended version on iTunes or you just get the segments that make it to air.
Exactly. So I think we can do something good. But yes, just being there to be in the middle of a wonderful discussion between Rob McCallum and Jay Bartlett, who, by the way, again, you got to check out their movie Nintendo Quest. Get it today, robmccallumfilms.com. Also, as well, Nintendo Quest Power Tour. Believe me, it's worth it just to see the banter back and forth between.
I won't even talk to him about it until the show. Then, okay.
Well, are you seeing it? Are you seeing it with him? Because I know
No,
he's saying
no.
okay.
He's seeing it. I think he's seeing it Thursday night at 6, and I'm seeing Thursday night at 10, and then he's going again on Saturday.
Okay.
I think, but I won't talk to him about it until we're live on the PCC.
All right, fair enough indeed.
So does this mean you're gonna like be the host in the middle between us, and you're gonna throw things at us, and we're just gonna see where it goes?
Let's see where it goes. Indeed, let's see where the Cosmic Crossfire takes us. And
I feel like you're trying to just like stir the pot by like bringing antagonizing forces into the same ring and like locking the door.
But you two are longtime friends, you know, and you two have that banter between you two that only longtime friends can have, where at the end of the day you two shake hands and give each other a big hug, and there you go. So I tell you what, it's just awesome when every time I get you two together in a room to discuss anything pop culture, and I definitely am looking forward to it. And I think anybody out there listening should look forward to it as well.
Well, everybody will get to hear it on the Pop Culture Cosmos next week, which I'm sure will contain lots of spoilers. So brave the crowds and the multiplex, and team up on some of that emergency, that vitamin C, that airborne, as you head into the theaters to make sure you don't get ill like Gerald this week or like myself last week. Stay strong, get going, get that immune system up, check out The Last Jedi, and then tune into the Pop Culture Cosmos to hear what Jay thinks, what I think, and how wrong he's going to be.
See, it starts already. Hey, I got my ticket already. I'm going Saturday, so definitely I'm looking forward to it as well. And I hope you enjoy it, and I hope well, we know Jay will enjoy it. I think it has the Star Wars working on it. So.
Jay's already decided he's going to enjoy it, which is problem number one with what I think.
I mean, just has there anything in the Star Wars universe Jay hasn't liked?
He likes it all.
Yeah, so there you go. But we'll talk more about it on next week's show. So we truly appreciate everyone being part and listening in on what Rob and I had discussions today. If you have a chance and you want to talk, or actually throw us a topic that we would like to talk about on the Cosmic Crossfire, or that you'd like to hear, share us your thoughts, popculturecosmos@yahoo.com, or give us a shout out on Facebook, Rob McCallum Films, Pop Culture Cosmos, Game Source, or Humanica Media on Facebook and Twitter as well. And we'll definitely be able to correlate that stuff on the air and on the next Cosmic Crossfire. So, Rob, as always great to have you on the Cosmic Crossfire, and just truly hope all the best, and hope you enjoy The Last Jedi.
Thanks.